I can see that it affects you, Mr. Patterson. But this is not a probation type case. This is not a case where you're going to be going immediately on extended supervision. You're going to have to go to prison on this case.
Marvin Patterson's 10 years in the Wisconsin correctional system is the maximum.
This is Kiera Brown, an 18-year-old girl in Milwaukee who was weeks away from graduation, shopping for a prom dress and planning the rest of her life. One night, she said yes to a ride from someone she trusted, and she never came back home. And the man responsible for that? He was out of prison in less than 4 years. Kiera Lachey Brown was born on September 14, 1999, and she grew up right in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as the oldest of 6 kids in a tight family. Her mother, Kenesha, was the center of that home, and by every account, Kiera was the kind of daughter who made that easy. She had 5 younger siblings, 3 brothers named Marquise, Morel, and Marcellus, and a sister named Kamaria, and Kenesha later said that she and Kiera were so close she considered her daughter her best friend. That was not just something a mother says at a funeral. That was the real situation in that house, and everyone around them knew it. Kiera's mother described her as someone who did not have a bad bone in her body, someone who was genuinely a good person. People who knew her said she was outgoing, sweet, and full of energy. And her aunt, Trinity Brown, who later handled the family's fundraising efforts, described Kiera as a beautiful, spirited young woman from a good family, someone who had many friends and who everyone who met her simply loved. That is not an exaggeration built up after a tragedy. That was who Kiera was while she was still alive, and the people around her will tell you that to this day. Kiera wanted to join the military, travel the world, and had bigger dreams about modeling and building a life for herself on her own terms. While she was finishing her senior year at Harold S. Vincent High School in Milwaukee, she was already working a steady job, putting money in her pocket, doing what sharp 18-year-olds do when they are serious about where they are going. And in the spring of 2018, she was locked in on finishing strong. She was somewhere between a white prom dress and a teal one, still deciding, still excited about all of it, still counting down to May graduation, with no idea that none of it was going to happen.
Kiera Brown's mom says her daughter was worried about finding the perfect prom dress,
either the white dress or the teal dress,
and finishing up her senior year.
She was getting ready for graduation.
Now, let us talk about Marvin Patterson. He was 19 years old at the time, 1 year older than Kiera, and he had graduated from the same school, Vincent High School, the year before she would have. He and Kiera had known each other for years. They had dated on and off for a while before eventually going their separate ways, and the breakup had happened roughly a year before any of this took place. This was not some stranger showing up out of nowhere. He was someone Kiera's family had seen for years, someone she had real history with. And that's important to understand because it explains exactly why nobody in that household had any reason to be worried when he came back around. Patterson had been working 2 jobs, one at Walmart and another at a landscaping company called Timber Care, and he had saved up enough money to buy a white Audi, which is the kind of purchase a young man is always going to want to show off. So in late March of 2018, he called Kiera out of nowhere, said he had something to show her, and asked her to come out. Kenesha Brown later recalled the moment her daughter came to her about that call, telling her mom that her ex had called and wanted to show off his new car. Kiera mentioned it like it was nothing, because for her, it was nothing, just a guy she used to see reaching out with no drama attached to it. The family had seen no warning signs of any kind of violence in the relationship, nothing that would have made Kenesha pull her daughter back and say, "Stay home tonight."
Brown says her daughter's ex-boyfriend lured her out of the house Sunday, saying he had something to show her.
On the evening of Sunday, March 25, 2018, Kiera got in the car with Marvin Patterson. She probably figured she would be back before her mother even noticed she was gone, and Kenesha had no reason to think otherwise because everything about how that night started looked completely normal. No argument before she left, no tension, nothing that flagged any kind of danger. What Kiera didn't know was that Patterson had a 9mm handgun sitting in that car's glove compartment, which he said he had bought for protection on the streets. He had even mentioned the gun to her before that night, so it was not exactly a secret. But what nobody has ever been able to answer clearly is why that gun had to be in the car on a night that was supposed to be nothing more than two people catching up. Prosecutors would ask that exact question in court later on, and they never got a real answer. Before that night was over, Kiera Brown was dead. At around 5:30 in the morning on Monday, March 26, 2018, Milwaukee police got a call about a car in an alley on the 9800 block of West Carmen Avenue on the far northwest side of the city. A person in the area had spotted a white Audi sitting in the alley with the driver's side door wide open and no one behind the wheel. When officers got there, they found Kiera Brown in the passenger seat with a gunshot wound to the head. She was already gone. When they removed her body from the car, a 9mm handgun was found underneath her. Patterson was not there. He had left her in that alley and walked away. So let that land for a second.
Brown's ex-boyfriend, 19-year-old Marvin Patterson, turned himself into police on Tuesday, 24 hours after Brown was found dead in the passenger seat of her white Audi, which was left in an alley near 98th and Carmen, with the driver's side door open. And police say the gun was under her body.
The girl was shot inside his car, and instead of calling for help or staying with her, Patterson drove to the alley, left her body there with the door open, and disappeared. The doctors confirmed Kiera died from a single gunshot wound to the head, and her death was ruled a homicide. Patterson turned himself in to Milwaukee police the next day, on Tuesday, March 27th, about 24 hours after she was found.
He took my baby.
When detectives sat down with Patterson, he told them two completely different stories. His first version was that the gun was in the cup holder. Kiera picked it up, possibly to take a photo, and when he tried to take it back from her, the gun went off by accident. Detectives didn't believe that, so they kept pressing him, and when they did, he changed his story completely and told police that while he and Kiera were talking in the car, he decided to point the gun at her head, and that when he did, it went off. He told police he didn't mean to kill her.
He decided to point a gun at Kiera Brown's head as they talked in her car. The Vincent High School senior died instantly,
but later changed his story, saying he decided to point the gun at her head, and when he did, the gun went off. He said he did not intend to kill her, and after shooting her, he freaked out and drove the car into an alley, left her there, and took off.
Now comes the arrest and what the court process looked like. On March 30th, 2018, 4 days after the shooting, Patterson was formally charged with first-degree reckless homicide while using a dangerous weapon, and that charge carried a maximum of 60 years in prison. He showed up to his first court appearance and cried while bail was being set. His lawyer pointed out that he had no criminal record, had lived in Milwaukee his whole life, had gone to Vincent High School, and had been working. None of that changed what he did to Kiera. At the preliminary hearing, a detective took the stand and told the court exactly what Patterson admitted.
Guided by a Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputy, Marvin Patterson is dressed in orange, coming from jail after being accused of shooting and killing 18-year-old Kiera Brown.
Did Mr. Patterson implicate himself in the death of KLB?
Yes, he did.
Now charged with first-degree reckless homicide, use of a dangerous weapon. Detective James Hutchinson testified about Patterson's admission of what happened on March 26th.
He, at one point, took that gun in his hand, pointed it at her head, and pulled the trigger. He stated that it was a horrible mistake or accident.
If convicted, Patterson faces more than 60 years in prison.
60 years. That is where this was supposed to stay. But it did not stay there. And what happened next is where this case gets even harder to sit with. In December of 2018, a judge threw out Patterson's police interview completely after an expert came into court and testified that Patterson had learning difficulties and did not fully understand his rights when detectives questioned him. Both versions of his story, including the one where he admitted pointing the gun at Kiara's head, were ruled inadmissible. The most important evidence the prosecution had was gone before any jury ever saw it. Then in June of 2019, the state's main witness did not show up on the day the jury trial was supposed to start, and a judge released Patterson on a bond with electronic monitoring while prosecutors figured out what to do next. Kenesha Brown was in that courthouse when Patterson walked out without handcuffs. She had been waiting over a year for a trial that just fell apart in front of her. What prosecutors were left with was the physical evidence from the scene, and that evidence actually lined up more with the accident story than with the pointing the gun story. The shot had been fired from a medium distance, meaning not up close against her head, and testing showed Kiara's DNA was on the gun while Patterson's DNA was on her hands. That is the kind of result that supports the idea of two people fighting over a weapon more than it supports someone deliberately aiming. With the statements thrown out and the witness gone, prosecutors had to make a hard call. On August 22, 2019, Patterson pleaded guilty to a reduced charge called homicide by negligent handling of a dangerous weapon, which is a much lighter charge than what he'd originally been facing. The chief prosecutor explained publicly that after losing the interview and the witness, the evidence that remained fit this lower charge, and the state had to work with what was left. That explanation might make legal sense on paper, but for Kiara's family, it was just one more loss piled on top of everything else they had already been through. On October 10, 2019, Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Janet Protasiewicz looked across the courtroom at Marvin Patterson and handed down his sentence. Under the reduced charge he had pleaded to, the maximum she could give him was 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of monitoring after his release, for a total of 10 years in the Wisconsin prison system. She gave him every day the law allowed her to give him.
5 years in prison and 5 years on extended supervision. That's how long Marvin Patterson will spend in the correctional system thanks to amended charges.
I can see that it affects you, Mr. Patterson. But this is not a probation type case. This is not a case where you're going to be going immediately on extended supervision. You're going to have to go to prison on this case.
Marvin Patterson's 10 years in the Wisconsin correctional system is the maximum.
The judge said that nobody could say for certain exactly what happened inside that car, but because a young life had been taken, the maximum sentence was the only sentence that made sense. But here's what 10 years actually meant in real life. Patterson had already been locked up since March of 2018, so after counting the time he had already served, he was expected to finish his prison time and walk out around spring of 2023, less than 4 years actually behind bars for taking Kiara's life. Kiara's family sat in that courtroom, and they were doing that math in their heads in real time. Patterson's lawyer had argued for even less, asking the judge to give him around 14 months, or just the time he had already served, pointing to his clean record and the forensic results that supported the accident version of events, and noting that he had kept both of his jobs the whole time he was out on bond waiting for sentencing. Patterson himself stood up and said he was sorry, that it was an accident, and that he thought about it every day. The prosecutors pushed back and told the court that these were just two young people who had cared about each other, who were just riding around together that night, and the only question that could not be answered was why there was a gun in the car at all. Then Kenesha Brown stood up to speak, and she was not trying to hold anything back.
I cry every day. Every day. My daughter was my best friend. I don't care how sorry he is, because sorry is not going to bring my daughter back. Sorry is not going to make it right or make it feel better.
She had written out a full letter to the court, but she could barely get through it. She told the judge that Patterson killed her daughter, that Kiara did not kill herself, and that 5 years felt like a slap in the face. She said she wanted to feel like justice had happened, and that standing in that room did not feel like justice at all.
There will never be another.
Brown's mother, Kenesha, still shaken by a pain she says won't go away, telling the court why her daughter's killer shouldn't be on the streets after only 5 years.
I can't even read my whole letter, but it's hurtful. It's hurtful. It's so hurtful. He needs to sit and think about what he's done.
Kiara's grandmother, Nona Winters, spoke just as plainly. She told the court that what happened was not an accident and not negligence, but deliberate murder, that the justice system had failed her granddaughter, and that she hoped every night when Patterson closed his eyes, he would see Kiara's face slumped over with a bullet in her head. That's a grandmother standing in a courtroom saying that because she had nothing else left to say. After the sentencing, Patterson went to his lawyers and filed a motion asking the court to reduce his sentence, arguing that 10 years was too much compared to other people convicted of the same thing. That motion was denied. Then he took it to the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, and in November of 2021, the court said no again, pointing to how serious the crime was, how many times he had changed his story to the police, and the fact that he had left Kiara's body in that alley and ran. He tried every door he could find to get out earlier. Every door closed on him. But none of that does anything for Kiara's family. The official Wisconsin Domestic Violence Homicide Report for 2018 included this case and classified it as a domestic violence homicide because of the relationship between the two of them, which put Kiara on a list of women in that state who were killed by someone they had once been close to.
Kiara's mother, Kenesha Brown, is heartbroken, losing her daughter in such a tragic way, recently saying her final goodbye to the high school senior who had big dreams.
We laid her to rest on Friday. I just wanted to look him in his eye, so he could see, see all what he did to everybody, not just to me, everybody. He hurt a lot of people.
Kiara was supposed to graduate in May of 2018. She was supposed to walk across that stage and start the life she had been planning. Instead, her family set up a GoFundMe to pay for her funeral and raised $5,425 out of a $12,000 goal, with 149 people helping. Over 1,000 people lit digital candles for her on a gun violence memorial page, most of them strangers who had never met her, but who felt the weight of what happened to her. She was 18 years old, trusted someone she had known for years, got into a car and never came home, and the person responsible was out of prison before she would have even turned 23. No legal charge, no courtroom language, and no reduced sentence are ever going to change what Kenesha Brown already knows, which is that her daughter left that house on a Sunday night and did not come back, and the man who made that happen barely served 4 years for it. Do you think the system gave Patterson a way out that Kiara's family never got? Or do you think the evidence really did point to an accident and the law just followed the facts where they led? Drop your thoughts in the comments section.
Even if I get answers, that won't be enough. That won't be enough.
Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.